Bonjour, my name is Bruce Goldstein, and welcome to clap.ch. I have a long history with William Castle that goes back 22 years. When I first started the repertory at Film Forum, it was a time when what we call repertory cinemas, and I think you call them cinéma d'essai, is that correct? A lot of them were closing because of many things. Real estate in New York was getting too high to run this kind of theater, but also because the videotape was becoming very popular, and a lot of people didn't think that people would actually pay money to see old movies that they can get on tape. So it was kind of a dilemma for me. What can I do? So I decided I wanted to try to play films that were more theatrical in nature, something you couldn't have at home. So we did 3D festivals, for example. And we did CinemaScope Festival because at that time there was no such thing as letterboxing. All the CinemaScope films on tape were panned and scanned, so you only saw a third of the image. But the jackpot was coming up with the idea of bringing back the William Castle films and other gimmick movies with the original gimmicks. And we got so much attention, publicity. It was amazing. And I became a little famous for doing this, especially when we wired the cinema for the Tingler with a buzzer on every third seat. William Castle never did that. He only put one buzzer in the whole cinema. In fact, I had Mrs. Castle as a guest in 1988. She said, "Bill never went to this much trouble." So we had everything. And I got a reputation. I was invited to do it in Tel Aviv in 1998, I think. And this year I've just completed my third city European tour. William Castle, we did the Cinémathèque Française in Paris, the Film Museum in Munich, and now the NIF in Neuchâtel. Well, mostly it was for publicity and marketing more than anything else. It was just a way to get people to come to, a fun way to get his audience, which I think were mostly teenagers, to the theater. I mean, no one really took the gimmick seriously, even in the 50s. It was just a funny, cool thing, just like it is today. People had fun with it, basically. You know, when they first showed House on Haunted Hill, the kids would, in those days you could sit and watch the film 2 or 3 times if you wanted. So they knew where the skeleton was, on the second show, they knew when the skeleton was going to come out. So they would throw popcorn and drinks at the skeleton. It was never really scary. He was using it as marketing and promotion for the films. It was a way to draw attention to the film. Even then, there was so much competition from television and other movies, you had to do something to draw attention to yourself. I think Alfred Hitchcock learned something from William Castle because Psycho, he used a gimmick. The gimmick was, no one will be seated in the last 20 minutes of Psycho. Well, that kind of thing had never been done in movies because the way people used to go to the movies in America, they would just show up at any time in the middle of the movie and stay over because there was continuous shows. Well, Psycho was the first film that said you have to come at the scheduled time. You can't just walk in at the ending. That was a gimmick. And I think he might have gotten that from William Castle. It was a gimmick, and nothing more. I don't think anyone really got scared. The way we do it is maybe even scarier. With the Tingler, for example, the Tingler sequence, the main sequence where the Tingler is loose in the cinema, I've actually created a codified, meaning a series of events that would happen. And I think it's a little more frightening than what was originally done, which was just to run the theater and have on the soundtrack people saying, "The Tingler's in the theater, he's over here, he's over here." But we actually have an interactive part with actors in the audience, planted in the audience, which is, I think, a lot more fun. His best gimmick was the Tingler, I think, and House on Haunted Hill. And he had the insurance policy from Macabre, and anyone who died during watching Macabre would get $1,000 from Lloyd's of London. No one did. He probably would have been happier if someone did drop dead. Would have gotten more publicity, but no one did, as far as I know. And then there were some really lame gimmicks, like he had a film called Zotz. He gave out a Zotz coin, big deal. There was a film called 13 Ghosts, which was shown here, where you got the ghost viewer, Mr. Sardonicus with the punishment pole. That was pretty cool. But by the time of Straitjacket, and he had the fright break in Homicidal, By the time of Straight Jacket, I guess he ran out of ideas. He gave out little axes at every screening. I don't know. I think Joan Crawford is a gimmick unto herself, so maybe it wasn't necessary. It would be nice if more people kind of married theater to movies. I think that's kind of a fun thing, to marry live things in the theater. But unfortunately, the way films are distributed in multiplexes and thousands of theaters, and the theaters are run not by the theater people at the theater, but by a corporate somebody thousands of miles away. You need, like at Neuchâtel, we have a wonderful crew. They've just been working with me exclusively on the William Castles, and they've come up with some really funny stuff, and it's just so great. I don't think you could do that on a mass scale. It's a personal thing. Oh, I think the screenings here are the best I've ever had of the William Castles. The Tingler audience was the best I ever had, by far. Very enthusiastic. The screams were the best. The Tingler is my favorite. It's because of the gimmicks, and it's a dumb movie in so many ways. The logic of that movie is so stupid, but I just love it. It's the whole conceit of it, the Tingler being loose in a movie theater. I just love it. I added the psychedelic stuff myself and created Psychedelorama, and we put the skeleton back in. But, I was talking to Mathieu Begea, who's I can't pronounce the captain of the crew here, and saying, we could put a gimmick every 5 minutes into the Tingler and it would work, Yeah, I love 3D, but it gets tiresome after a while. Once you get over the initial novelty, it doesn't really add anything to the movie. I just saw Up on the new Pixar film in 3D. I don't think the 3D added anything to the movie. I liked the beginning of the movie a great deal. I didn't like the movie so much. But the 3D doesn't really add anything. It was the same problem in the 50s, in the early 50s, when Hollywood was threatened by television and they brought in the big gimmick. It was 3D, and they thought that was going to be the future. They thought 3D was like the next, after sound and after color, 3D would be the next thing for movies and to compete with TV. And they made about 40 3D movies in the 53, 54. And after a while, I think the audiences got tired of it, with wearing the glasses, and kind of was a drag. And it was no longer novel. The first 3D movie, which was called Wanna Devil, it wasn't the first, but it was the first really popular one. It's such a bad movie, but it was a huge hit because of the 3D. But people got tired of it, and I think they're going to get tired of 3D now. I think the solution for Hollywood is to make better movies. I love this festival. It's really beautifully organized, and
did you
team
know
here is great. No, I never even heard of the town. I was like, what am I going to do in a town in Switzerland for a week? And why Neuchâtel? And I said the other night, because it's another planet for me, And Anaïs Emery, the artistic director, did a fabulous job. And the whole team here is really wonderful. Mathieu, who I've worked with on the gimmicks, and his team, they're all fantastic people to work with.